What did you do as a teenager that you will never tell your parents? All those times I sarcastically answered smoke the reefer to the question of what I was going out to do. I was actually telling the truth. I really didn't want to do PE one day, but I didn't have a good reason, so I knew my dad wouldn't write me a note. So what I did instead was get a plain piece of paper and asked him to sign it, because we're doing a thing in English where we try to guess the personality of a person from their signature, which he totally bought. I then went to the printer and typed out your standard sick note. Stuck the signed plain paper into the printer so when the note printed, my dad's signature would appear at the bottom. I will probably tell my dad this at some point because I'm actually kinda proud of myself for pulling it off. My time to shine. My senior year of high school, I snuck out of the house at like 2 AM to get some. My parents were a little psycho and put bells on the front and back doors. You know, in case of burglars. But they didn't put them on the laundry room door, which led to the garage. The garage had a side door in it that lead outside. So obviously that was my way out. The problem with that side door is that it's a bit hard to tell when it's locked, since you can always get out but not necessarily back in. So, me being stupid and horny, just assumed it was fine and went along my merry way. Did the deed. Then when I tried to get back in, I found the door locked. Shit. I tried every other possible entrance. All locked. But I had my phone and an idea so crazy it just might work. I called my mom and in my best helpless daughter voice cried, "Mommy, I woke up in the front yard and the door is locked. I'm so scared." She came right out and got me. I mumbled something about sleepwalking. Then she made me waffles since I was so distressed. My mom still tells the story at family get-togethers. I now have a reputation as a crazy sleepwalker. TLDR got laid. Lied to my mom. Then she made me waffles. I legit used Photoshop to change my grades on a bad report card once. They never figured it out. My mom still recalls this one day when I was unusually positive and talkative with her. It's because I was high out of my mind on Ritalin. I had a mini breakdown when I took Ritalin once and called my mom at 6 in the morning and told her how depressed I was and how anxious I was and that a lot of the problems I had were because of her and my dad. Not a proud moment. Sorry, Mom. My mom let my friends all come over the night after graduation. Believe it or not, she got together with the other moms for us to have a little party, complete with a few malt beverages and beer. We gave my mom all our keys. We turned up the music. We got out a table. We proceeded to play Didnt all night. My mom still thinks we got drunk. By the end of my senior year of high school, I racked up 26 detentions for going to first period for 10 minutes and then just leaving for the rest of the day. My mom thought I was in an after-school club called Decide Against Bullying in Schools, ACADABS, which is what I was actually doing every time I skipped. I miss high school me. Going on dates with girls. Kissing girls. You know, the usual for a 16-year-old supposed Muslim girl. Yeah, would get myself held if I told them. I'm not proud of this anymore, but after I realized that my parents had stashed all the liquor behind the washer and dryer, I totally started taking a few shots here and there. Once my friends found out I had access to my parents' Redneck liquor cabinet. We overdid it one weekend at the beach. And I panicked because this time I knew my parents would notice. But I also had to pee. And there were no public restrooms at that beach. So I went behind a sand dune and peed in a fast food cup. Then poured it back into my dad's mostly empty rum bottle. Drunken teenage logic decided that I'd had enough from that day, that I had just been borrowing it from good old dad. So I gave it back. I'll never know if my parents used the rum for anything. But what I can say for sure is that they attended a party every January and brought their own homemade brew, which was part rum. TLDR, I'm pretty sure I'll let my parents drink my pee. My parents were both out of town but left the car with keys in kitchen. Anyway, I was 16. Just learned how to drive and this girl texted me to come pick her up and come back to my place. 10 minutes later I'm grabbing the keys and driving across town in a car that I shouldn't be in with no license. They are never gonna find that one out. When I got my first cell phone, an Nexus 5, my parents kinda went nuts with the whole plugged in and turned off in the living room at night thing. Knowing them it was probably an anti-porn measure. Unfortunately for them, my 3DS hadn't a half decent internet browser. Really strict parents of my friends was not allowed to go on the internet on his 3DS because of this. Don't get me wrong, he was an innocent kid, but was only allowed half an hour a day on it. When I was 13, a friend of mine used to steal his mom's muscle relaxers and split them with me at school, and some of those days I would have my dad pick me up because I wasn't feeling too great. Snuck out of the house with a friend while I was staying over with her to meet a group of boys. She hooked up with one of them in a truck while the rest of us, me and the other two guys, hung around in the desert at night trying not to notice the truck rocking back and forth. I must have been 14 or so. Never did anything like that before or since. I went with her BC I was afraid she'd get in trouble with the boys by herself. So I wanted to watch over her. We got caught by her parents who told me they were going to tell my parents. I prepared to be grounded for life. Then her dad changed his mind and told me I was a good kid and he would let this one go. But we had better not sneak out of his house again. Needless to say, he went through this a lot with his daughter. I never told my parents and never will lol. And I'm 28 now. I sneaked out a few times to have alone times with a high school girlfriend. Only got caught once. Modern cars are so quiet. Teenagers now just don't know the struggle of trying to keep an old Slant 6 from waking your parents. When I was in high school I would push my truck out of the driveway and down the street so my parents couldn't hear it start up. When I was about 15, I took half an eighth of mushrooms and maybe 8 or more Corisodin pills and went downstairs to watch a movie with my parents. My parents were always fighting back then. They really hated each other and I hated them as well, but for some reason that night was very pleasant. We were all laughing and joking and having a genuinely good time. Meanwhile, the walls around them were breathing and the carpet was swirling beneath me. I was having trouble focusing on their faces, that would be the Corisodin, but I wasn't in the least bit paranoid that they may know I was high. It was an extremely strange night. My dad and I are friends now and we've talked about our drug use when we were younger. He was getting high in his room while I was getting high in mine. And angrily taking my weed when he caught me and smoking it himself. Apparently my mom was the one who was adamantly into drug. Dad just put on a show for her sake, but for some reason, I've never mentioned that night to him. I used to sneak out and do stupid stuff with my friends in the neighborhood. Not drugs or drinking, but stealing stop signs, egging a house once, laying on the golf course and shooting the sheet. I honestly though my folks knew about it and that they were just of the kids will be kids mentality. I even got a ride home with the local police once or twice. But no. My parents had no ducking clue what I was up to. I don't want to tell them, not because I worry about what they think of me, but rather that they would blame themselves for not seeing it. I did a lot of DMT in high school. When my parents asked where I was going, I always said no idea. Probably another dimension. I'm sure they knew I was smoking pot, but I'm positive that they have no idea what dimethyltryptamine is or what it does. A friend from high school and I snuck out with her boyfriend who could drive when I was 14. She was 15. He let her drive the car and she crashed it. It was his dad's car. His car apparently being in the shop. I didn't really get to hurt besides some bruises, but we had to walk 7 miles home at 3 AM. We got home right before anyone got up. I trafficked large quantities of molly, mushrooms, acid and weed all across the US to sell at music festivals. We would go on month-and-a-half long road trips dealing at them, and could make $15K a person each weekend. I'm not sharing that one. I looked up porn on the family computer because I knew they'd blame my brother. He was an asshole and we didn't get along. So whenever he'd piss me off, I'd look up porn. I didn't even watch it, just Google some tits so it would show on the search history. One time he ruined my school project, so I looked up some bondage and really torturous BDSM stuff. Then when my mom went through the search history she'd find it. Tell my dad. And they'd freak out on him. They never knew it was their Catholic school attending daughter being a spiteful cheat. The clean clothes on the floor was there. Not only because I was a lazy schlob, but my closet was a mushroom farm. Was trying to convince my dad to buy me a new computer for college. He doesn't exactly like the fact that I play video games due to the Asian Middle Eastern mentality of study till you die, but I'd been doing it for so long he begrudgingly accepted it after realizing it wasn't just a phase. However, he made it clear that he would only buy a computer for the express purpose of helping me get a computer science degree. Shocker. Right? Unfortunately, he wasn't tech savvy at all. So I searched online stores until I found a laptop that I wanted to replace my old shitty one with. It was an $800 Asus gaming laptop with middle of the road specs for the time. There was no way he would ever buy me a laptop that was built for the express purpose of gaming. So I used Inspect Element to replace all instances of the word gaming on the product page with the word studying, and made sure not to reload the page when showing it to him. It would change the words back into gaming. It worked, and within 1 week I got my new studying computer. I used to intern at a radio station. One day, I told my parents that I was going to go early to sit in on an editorial meeting. Instead, I took a bus an hour south to interview a felon about her experiences with solitary confinement and prison debt for a piece I was working on. They think this interview took place at the station. If they found out the truth now, they would probably get a heart attack. When I was 18 I flew to Portugal to meet my boyfriend at the time, who was over there for the summer. One day we decided, duck it. This particular city is cool, but let's go exploring. So we packed up our belongings, walked out to the edge of the city, and started hitchhiking. About a week and a half later we've passed through Portugal, Spain, and most of France. And my scumbag boyfriend decides he needs to find himself or some bullshit and dumps me in a petrol station in eastern France. So I wind up staying with some lovely Buddhists who are on a retreat in the mountains. Then hitch various lifts back to Spain and fly home. When I got home my parents asked me if I got up to anything fun. I said we did some traveling by train. I'm almost 30 now and it's still a secret. It's an interesting story, but I was so ducking lucky it went relatively okay. I could have been one of those kids who goes missing or gets murdered. I used to steal and snort my mom's painkillers. Initially to try to understand why she did it, how she experienced life. After 2 weeks I noticed I was walking around like a zombie the way she had my whole life. Haven't touched the little devil since. Left the country. When my dad was a teenager he periodically hopped the border with his friends. Security was a lot less tight in those days, so you just had to wait until no one was watching and duck into the field on the other side of the road. Wanted to go home sick from school early in 8th grade. So I put a mouthful of soup in my mouth at the end of lunch and just held it there. Went to my next class and sat down quietly. Then 5 minutes and frantically rushed up to the front of the room and threw up in the garbage can. Got to go home early and miss the next day as well. And my parents thought I had legitimately caught a stomach virus. My dad knows this. Mom doesn't. My freshman year of college I got busted for smoking pot at school. Just smoked a joint outside and went back to my room to do some homework. 20 minutes later campus police knocked on the door. My room reeked of weed up. They took my bud, all my grinders, pipes, what have you. They sent a letter home and fined me. I told my dad to keep checking the mail to make sure mom didn't get to it. He told me just to be more careful, lol. My girlfriend ended up dropping by my house on her way to visit me one day and grabbed the letter out of the mailbox. My mom never found out. I'm a straight A student and it'd break her heart. Sweet mom. Not me. But my cousin. His parents go away for the weekend with explicit instructions not to take the boat out. As soon as they round the corner, He's pulling the boat out of the garage. My cousin, Tim, and his friend, Eric, go to local lake to go water skiing. Eric is pulling Tim behind the boat and Eric starts to go in circles to make waves for Tim to jump. Eric is sitting on the edge of the boat while driving, so he can more easily look back to make sure Tim hasn't fallen. The boat hits a big wave and Eric is tossed out of the boat. Now, the boat is going in circles with Tim skiing behind it and nobody driving. It is getting closer and closer to the docks with each pass. Eventually, Tim swings wide and swims as hard as he can to get out of the water before the boat comes back around. Someone on one of the docks sees what is going on and jumps in the boat and shuts it off. Just as it scrapes one of the docks. They took the boat home, had a buddy repair the scratches, and never said a word to my aunt and uncle. Mid-teens. Went to an unsupervised birthday party with a mixed group of friends, boys and girls. Birthday girl wants to play truth or dare. Ha ha ha. Cute. Right? It got grown up real fast. Long story short, we all watched each other have sex. Bonus, years later my brother dated the rando girl I nailed. He brought her over to meet the family. We recognized each other, but said nothing. Just shared a horrifying silence. When they were leaving, I heard my brother ask her if she got to meet me. She replied, "Oh yeah. I got to meet him." I cringed, and have never stopped cringing. Well, I was a pretty good kid growing up. Didn't smoke, drink, do drugs or even have sex growing up. I just never felt the need to. However, this one time I was about 14 years old. Pretty developed. More so than my friends. And I constantly had attention from boys. I was going into my freshman year of high school and this senior took an interest in me. Many nights of AOL chats and we were hooked on one another. Thing was, he was 18, almost 19. Clearly I couldn't tell my dad that his just barely 14-year-old wanted to date a man. So I did what any kid would do, said I was going to a friend's house and from there her and I double dated to a movie. Dude had his tongue down my throat the entire film. And kept trying to feel me up. When he begged me for sex I kinda dropped him. I did that exact scenario probably 4 or 5 times my freshman year. So yeah. My dad will never find out about all the grown-ass men I was kissing up on my freshman year of high school while he thought I was baking cookies and watching scary movies with my girlfriends. When I was 17 I would go visit my friend's sister at her college. I told my mom we were doing innocent activities like seeing movies and going to dinner. Really? I was getting wasted with my 19-year-old boyfriend who also went to school there. I never planned to tell my mom. But she picked me and my now husband up from a wedding this summer. We were pretty drunk and he says, "This is how drunk we used to get when I first met you." Thanks honey. My parents didn't know shit during my teenage years. My mom had pretty severe mental health issues. And my father had a level of apathy rivaling that of a serial killer. Now, I was always kind of quiet and bookish. So I had no desire to go to parties or whatever. Dad also had an alcohol problem. So I was never too keen on drinking or drugs. Once, though, my rich friend's brother was taking him and a few of my friends to the city, New York. He asked if I could tag along with them. And I come from small town USA and hadn't ever been there before. Despite the fact that we aren't really that far, upstate NY is super rural. But if you drive a few hours down south, you'll hit the city. I went out with them at about 6 AM. And didn't come back until midnight. We didn't really do anything dangerous or risky, you know. Sightseeing. Random store. etc. But now that I look back on it, I never even asked them for permission. I just got on a train. Left to a giant metropolis. And didn't come back for 16 hours. They never even asked to know where I went. I was chatting with my best friend's older brother on AIM one night and he offered to pick me up in his car for ice cream, so I snuck out with him that night. Later that evening in the school parking lot at midnight, he pinned me down in his car seat and made me feel super unsafe. Borderline sexual assault. I was thinking the whole time it was happening I didn't even tell my mom where I was that night. I still haven't told her what happened nor that I had even snuck out. Didn't tell my best friend either. Taking that one to the grave. I was 16 and had a younger sister about 7 years younger than me. Anyways. My mom worked 2 jobs and always left her with me to watch. Usually I was a good babysitter. Made her dinner. Played games with her. etc. This one night however, I had to babysit her unexpectedly. Which sucked because I had planned on tripping on mushrooms with a few close friends. My mom leaves and I informed my buds. But told them we could trip at my house since mom was gone. My little sister was a tattletale and always got me into trouble. Flash forward. I'm in the kitchen making mushroom tea. She walks up and asks what I'm doing. Knowing that she's obsessed with Harry Potter. I tell her I was making a wizard's potion. She yells out that she'll tell mom I had friends over if I didn't give her some. I feel extorted and get pissed. Yeah, I could have given her just regular tea but I'm pissed in my adolescent mind and say duck it. I give her a coffee mug of mushroom tea. I know it's ducked up. An hour later. Everyone is tripping. Including her. We all wound up having a great time and she had to experience the Lion King on a whole nother plane of existence. I told her about it years later when she was 16 and we both laughed. But goddamn. I hope my mom never finds out.